Last week's video on the Decimator Great Axe generated a lot of engagement. In that video, I argued that Thea is the better hero to carry the axe, going aggressive and using the threat of her second swings to force blocks, fueling reprise. But some of you disagreed, arguing for a protective strategy with Boltyn and Soul Shield. So in today's cast, I'm comparing the two warriors as it pertains to the Great Axe, how they will each have to play very differently, and why I believe ultimately that Dorinthea is the better option. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends, and welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast for a reprise. See, we're so witty over here at Dice Commando. For a reprise video on the recent Great Axe video that I did last week. So this was actually a really fascinating video. Got a lot of engagement, kind of surprised me how much actually, which is great. A lot of good discourse on that, and some of the disagreements that came out that were people like, I think Boltyn is better, not Dorinthea. So they kind of disagreed with the fundamental thing. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. So the approach we're going to do is I'm going to fundamentally talk about the approach of both of these heroes, because they play very differently. My take on this, anyways, that they're going to have to approach this very differently. Boltyn, I mean, the main argument most people used in the comments as to why they thought Boltyn was better was Soul Shield. Fantastic D-React, like no question there. So I think where a lot of people's head is at with that is Boltyn will play defensively, right? Not quite fatigue, but pretty much fatigue. And for me, ultimately, kind of the thesis statement for tonight is really, for me, that's kind of the issue, because as I mentioned in that cast, both at the beginning and at the end, I think you don't play this like a Guardian, because, if you're going to do that, I think that right now the tools that Guardian has available are just better. And let's go ahead, just for S's and giggles, throw those up, right? So we look at Anathos. Now, the Great Axe obviously has its thing where if you block it, it minuses, which is great. So it's effectively coming in for more, however you want to think about it. Either way, it's damage. But Anathos has got that whole, swinging for 6 thing, right? So, it's just the OG tricks here, right? Pummel, sure, it doesn't take a card, but Anathos and Pummel is coming for 10. And if we want to come for swing, or come for 10 with the Great Axe, we're looking at Felling Swing. Right, so again, it's a 2-card hand, fair enough, but Pummel's React seems a little better. You can also play the mind games with it. But then on top of that, we have cards like Rouse the Ancients and Zealous Belting, which, granted, do not always go into, right, you don't always lead these into Anathos, but a lot of times you do because it's there. Zealous Belting probably more, so, well, that's probably not entirely true. You probably do it with both, but either way, right, I'm not going to go down the whole Guardian play path. But these are some very strong tools available to the Guardians. And I think right now, for the most part, they outclass, no pun intended, maybe pun intended a little bit, what the Warriors can do with really the same non-hammer-based strategy. Because remember, this is not a hammer, it's an axe. And great, there's some very specific axe stuff that's very good. But it's not Pummel, right? And anyway, that's my takeaway on it. All right, so now let's move into the Boltyn discussion. All right, so how does Boltyn play this? Well, there's some really cool, and again, I see why folks argue that Boltyn's the better hero for this. Tricks like Soulbond Resolve, right? Soulbond Resolve and Banneret of Courage. That's pretty cray-cray, right? So it comes in, it blocks. That is what the kids are saying. I'm told officially. Somebody reached out and said, "Stop saying that. It's dumb. That is what the kids are saying." Whatever. See, again, we're having fun here, right? But Soulbond Resolve, if you throw a Banneret of Courage on it, and I think if you play, you can play, depending on your format, 2 or 3 of these. I think you can definitely have the luxury, because again, you're playing this defensively. I think you're going to have the luxury of waiting around to use Soulbond Resolve on Banneret. Gives you the extra prevention, plus 1 on the back, 1 on the front, I guess. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's really the only, in this type of build, you're not doing the normal Boltyn charge thing. It just wouldn't make sense to do that. So I think that ultimately that's probably the only Banneret you use. But this is pretty cool, right? And that's, to be fair, if you don't want to run Tunic, right? There's a lot of advantages for running Tunic in this type of build for, your front pumps and all that. But again, this is a pretty decent one for Boltyn on a defensive standpoint, right? That's a lot of blocking, or blocking plus prevention. You get the point. All right, next, and then let's go into the gist of the primary tools that I see him having available. There are others as well, right? But primarily what he has access to that no one else does, is the argument here, is Soul Shield's crazy for 2 for 6, plus it goes into the Soul, which helps you for cards like Beacon and Cataclysm. Right, and again, that's, Cataclysm's kind of an E-strike in its own little way, right? And, I think you might not even be able to play E-strike. Maybe you can, but again, Guardians play that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I think if you're trying to play, I don't know, yeah, you probably could stick it in Arsenal, something like that. So fair enough, you can play E-strike on that as well. But again, everybody can play E-strike, so that's no direct advantage to him. But you also have Cataclysm for, if you put, we just talked about Soulbond Resolves, you're going to get 2 from there. A Soul Shield or 2, well, that's 3 in your Soul, so maybe 4 in your Soul, so Beacon of Victory is a threat. Celestial Cataclysm's a threat. Maybe you only play 1 Beacon of Victory, just so they know it's like you pitch it early, and now they know it's there, and they've always got to worry about it with every time you tick up. And in your Soul, those are pretty good threats, right? So there's very good arguments for using Boltyn in this manner, and then, you're running Oases and Unmovables and Steelblade Shunts and all the other fun stuff. Again, y'all get it. So solid arguments there, right? But now let's go over to Dorinthea. And so just to be clear, right, this is in the Boltyn defensive type strategy, which I really think that's what he's bringing to the table. Right, so now let's go over and let's talk Dorinthea, and let's just start with the tools she has available. Now, one you're going to see on here is Spellblood, and you're like, well, Boltyn has that available, and that's a true statement. But Dorinthea uses it better because axes you control gain +2 and dominate until end of turn. So if you are using this to swing twice, well, the only warrior who's going to be able to swing twice, sure, there's like Dusk Path and all that. Like, there are ways to do it, but Dorinthea is the one who's going to swing the axe twice, or at least threaten it. So something like a Spellblood really is a Dorinthea card. You have Steelblade Supremacy, which is a force you to block type card. And guess what? That's the whole thing with the Decimator Great Axe, is they are de-incentivized to block this without a threat with which they need to block. And that is why, that's ultimately why I conclude that I do think Dorinthea is better because of that aspect, right? Now, again, Boltyn can play Warrior's Valor for the +3 and then the on-hit go again. And then, but what's he going to do with it, right? Maybe then he's got playing Red Zero Force, but are you playing Red Zero Force in this build? You're probably not. And sure, you're paid 1 to this, so maybe you're doing something like a CNC on the backside or whatever. I get it. But Dorinthea could, in theory, swing the weapon twice, right? Now, you're not going to counter on it. That would be disgusting. But she's got that threat, right? So they see a Warrior's Valor out there. You've got cards in hand. They're like, I'm looking at 7 now. Another 4 on the backside. Each time I block, it's minused. That's scary, right? And then you throw something like a Supremacy on there. I think you all understand what I'm driving at here, is that forcing them to, right, with the Boltyn strategy, by and large, they're not forced to block until a certain point, right? Until basically they just have extra cards in their hand. But again, they're not really, like, what are they going to do? Throw down a 3 block and block 2? Sure, it saves them health. If they don't need the card, fair enough, they'll do it. But by and large, they're not going to be blocking until they have crucial points in which they need to block. But with Dorinthea, I think you force that. So I think it really changes the game in terms. And is it more of an aggressive playstyle? Certainly, than sitting back and hiding behind a wall of D-reacts. It certainly is. It doesn't mean it's like aggro, though, right? So I think this mid-range warrior play, where they have to consider blocking you, and then your reprises are on, I really think that's why. That's why, for me, at least, the playstyle that would attract me to this out of the gate is Dorinthea, and I've been playing it. It seems to work pretty well. Actually, it's a little bit exceeding my expectations. I'll be honest, I have not tried the Boltyn build because, again, if I want to play Fatigue, I'm going to play like a Yoji or something like that, honestly, because you can do a 4 hammer and a shield, and you've got spinals and stuff like that. So anyway, that's where my head is. And again, I respect both opinions. I really do. I just personally think that in this case, that the threat of Valor in a second swing, or your boots are always there. And granted, Boltyn has the boots, but again, what's he going to do with it? Because Dorinthea lets you swing again, right? Dorinthea lets you swing again, which is pretty cool, right? Which is pretty cool. So anyway, that'll do it for today. Like I said, it was kind of a reprise, a rebuttal, whatever, to what we saw. But again, I want to thank everybody for that great discussion. Most of it, obviously I made some mistakes in it about, forgetting that certain things target swords and not weapons. So huge thank you to the community who did not roast me for that and took the gist, but much appreciated. So anyway, folks, thank you for tuning in. And before we get out of here, I just want to say, Tall Timmy, we love you, man. So anyway, nothing else, folks. Go Commando.